Sharon. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome to the January 14th meeting of the Topeka Development Corporation Board of Directors. I call this meeting to order. If you will stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll move forward. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk.
President Padilla,
Here.
Vice President Dobler,
Here.
Directors Hiller,
Here.
Ortiz, Valdivia Acala, Banks,
Here.
Kale,
Here.
Miller, Duncan,
Here.
and Hoper.
Here.
All right, we have 7 present with Directors Ortiz, Valdivia Acala, and Miller absent.
Thank you. Move on to item number 4. Madam Clerk.
4 is approval of the December 10, 2024 meeting minutes.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve and by Councilwoman Hiller and seconded by Councilman Dobler.
Can we approve by consensus?
Yeah.
Okay.
And vote for consensus. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Thank you.
All right, we have 7 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. Madam Clerk.
5 is approval of an additional funding request in the amount of $142,338 for operations and maintenance of Hotel Topeka, contingent upon governing body approval of the transfer of the funds of the Topeka Development Corporation.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Braxton Copley, our Assistant City Manager, will take us through this item and answer any questions you may have.
Sir.
Mr. President, thank you. Initially, the governing body was presented with a CapEx request for $125,000 for some civil side improvements to Hotel Topeka. That original project budget number was done without the benefit of survey, and it was done as part of the property condition assessment, so it was really a sort of flyby look that the civil engineer did back when they were doing the original property condition assessment that we commissioned after we purchased the hotel. After survey and after taking a hard look, rolling up their sleeves and including the ADA required sidewalk from Topeka Boulevard to be able to provide an accessible path from the boulevard up to the hotel, that amount has increased up to $268,000, and that includes design, inspection, as well as contingency. Consequently, we're here today to ask you for the additional $142,338 that we would need to be able to fully fund this project. The determined that it's twofold. One is, do you agree to the amount? And the second is, how do you want that funded? We do have the resolution in place that would allow for us to GO bond improvements in keeping with our capital project policy, which is they must be over $50,000, have a life longer than the bonds, et cetera, or you could use operating funds to pay for the $142,000. My request to you is to approve and use your judgment as to what do you think the better funding source is for us. We could go ahead and fund with that, the resolution authorizing, I believe it's up to $2 million of capital improvements for the project would allow us to bond the entire project cost of the $268,000 as opposed to just the delta of the $140,000 that we're asking for. Initially, you had authorized reserves for the first tranche of the $125,000. So glad to stand for any questions. Again, the site improvements are needed. We have a retaining wall that's in bad shape. We have some panels that have sunk that we need to get leveled up. And then The recommendation from the consultant was to provide an ADA accessible path from Topeka Boulevard, because if someone were to be on the boulevard now, they would have to go in the street, in the private street, to get up to Hotel Topeka, as opposed to having a sidewalk to travel on.
Thank you. Director Duncan.
So for 30 years, there's been no sidewalk there. Is this a legal requirement we now have to fulfill at this time to build this sidewalk from Topeka Boulevard to the entrance?
So I will defer to the city attorney in terms of whether or not it's required. I will tell you that the recommendation by the consultant that we hired to do the ADA analysis of the hotel made a number of recommendations, hundreds of thousands of dollars of recommendations. This was one of the higher recommendations, that if the DOJ or someone were to be called in on a complaint, this is one that they felt was important. Right.
This is one of the ones that we did the analysis that after the 2010 changes, it should have been done at the time. And now that we are a government entity owning it, it's one that you need to get done.
So are all hotels required to have a sidewalk from whatever street they're adjoining up into their entrance? I mean, I'll be honest, I'm looking at the facility that we plan to sell by the end of this year, that we've owned for a year and a half, that for 30 plus years we didn't do anything about this. We're cash strapped and now we want to spend $230,000. And I absolutely understand the ADA issues and the morality of this, and I'm not pushing back against that. I just pushing back against the timing.
When it was a privately held entity, the city of Topeka didn't have obligations to fix that. Now that it's a government entity, we fall under Title II of the ADA, not Title III, which is what it would have been under as a private hotel. So as long as it's in the city's hands, it should be fixed. I understand your philosophical point. It's one that you'll have to decide whether or not to proceed with.
Who
I guess.
owns the land and the walkway between Topeka Boulevard up to this plot?
I can answer that question. The county owns most of that. Obviously, the sidewalk on the boulevard is in city right-of-way. County owns the swath of land in between. We have prepared the easements and have presented those to the county commission for their approval, because they would need to grant the easements to Hotel Topeka. Obviously, those easements would run with the land and would go to any subsequent purchaser. In my conversations with Rick and Paul, our consultants, the franchises take a very hard look at ADA accessibility in terms of making their decision. Likely they would require the new franchisee to implement the ADA recommendations that the consultant recommended, because as we know, there are some things that don't currently meet the ADA in that hotel that was constructed 30 years ago.
And last question. Then.
This is an expense too, just for clarification, that you could use like a potential CID to reimburse ourselves for too. It would be an infrastructure cost that would be an eligible CID reimbursable expense.
I guess my last question is then, so if, for instance, the DOJ did come in here, we would be the only ones in violation. There'd be no violation to the county for not having a sidewalk up to the event center or the hotel area, even though that's their street. So they bear no financial assistance in this matter, possibly, is where I'm going with that.
I would not be comfortable giving an opinion on the fly on that, but I'm happy to research it and get you one. I just want to make sure that I'm not wrong on that
I
one.
understand. Okay, thank you.
Did you raise your hand first? Okay. Director Kell and Director Dobley.
Kind of along the lines of Councilman Duncan there, or Director Duncan, or Chairman, sorry. The aspect of having the county like chip in, so I would like to see what they're willing to do first on that aspect of things, because they have a lot of other entities on that property surrounding it that, like as was put up, that may be in violation themselves. So if we bring it to them, either having them pay it in whole or part of it, I think would be something that I'd be more interested in. I'm all for taking care of the ADA. That's part of the aspect of the hotel that I've consistently said when it comes to safety of the guests, we need to look at that very closely, make sure we're taking care of those items that have been neglected over the years. But it's getting to the point where, you know, I'm looking at this as we either need to start saying we're going to be the full-time owner and taking care of it as a full-time owner, or looking at the hard sell and trying to get it sold as quickly as possible. Because I feel like we're in this in-between area, and we're getting stuck with a lot of stuff being in this in-between area. And so I believe we need to really look at it hardcore as, are we going to be like own a park and own a hotel and run it? Or do we just need to get this off our hands as quickly as possible? Thank you.
If I may, before I acknowledge Director Dobler, I think we've made that determination already. We're making every effort to sell the hotel. I don't think that we've any real strong conversations that have come up that we would consider about retaining ownership and operation of the hotel. Am I correct? Okay. So I don't think we're still waffling back and forth.
Well, I'm saying the longer we sit in the middle is the more that we're getting ourselves kind of caught up with all this extra stuff. Whereas I believe like we need to take ownership. We need to take ownership and start going at it hardcore with we're the owners, or really looking hard at selling, because the sitting in the middle is now we're kind of getting stuck with things that are that in-between situation that would the new owners be doing this, you know, the old owners didn't do it, but now all of a sudden now we're stuck with doing it, and it's costing us money in the long run.
Again, Director Kell, I think we've made that determination that our focus is on selling the hotel. I don't think we're in between. We're just moving forward with it with a hard focus, as you put it. So there is an interim time between the time we find a qualified buyer and our continued ownership of it, but we have made it clear our intent is to sell that. So I don't think that question has not been answered. I think it has been answered. Councilman Dobler, then Councilman Banks. Director Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, President.
Well, Mike.
Braxton, what would it cost to build a piece of sidewalk from the existing sidewalk to the city right-of-way, skip the county portion, and build a sidewalk from the county property line up to the hotel?
Great question. $60 a lineal foot, so is what my construction cost is for a 5-foot wide sidewalk. The thing is, with having that gap, is you don't actually have an ADA accessible path from our sidewalk to get to the hotel.
You would on city property, but not on county property.
Correct.
Thank you.
Director Banks.
Braxton, let's say that we start this work on the sidewalk and then we sell the hotel, and we've put in quite a bit of effort, money toward completion of the project. Will we get anything back, or it's going to be a loss to us?
Thank you, Director Banks. As the city attorney has opined, this would be a CID eligible expense, so we would be able to recoup the cost of the sidewalk. Certainly, there would be the flexibility to try to negotiate for the payment of the sidewalk as part of the development agreement, but you're looking at a very insignificant cost in terms of the purchase and rehabilitation of the hotel versus the construction of a sidewalk. Again, as has been made clear to me from our consultants, the national flags take ADA accessibility very seriously, because that is potential liability for them and for the property, as well as the bad press to not have fully accessible hotels. And the ADA keeps getting more strict and more strict in terms of their requirements.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Director Hofer.
I've got a couple of questions. Not having a plan view On Topeka Boulevard, is there already curb cuts on either side of the drives that we don't have to worry about that portion? It's just from basically the Topeka Boulevard sidewalk up to,
The hotel, to get to.
is it just like an straight east-west?
Yes, ma'am, but logically following the road. So it's not just an absolute straight shot cross
Well,
country.
yeah,
It's actually trying to follow the road so that there's some method to the madness.
And we don't need to worry, it stops like at the drive going into the hotel?
No, this project would include to make it accessible all the way to the entrance to the hotel. So making sure we have an accessible path through, if we have to go through the parking lot, and then having curb cuts to get up onto the sidewalk adjacent to the hotel to make sure that that's fully compliant with the current ADA standards, because there are curb cuts right there coming off the parking lot. I don't remember seeing truncated domes there, so I don't think that they meet the current requirements of ADA.
Okay. What about from the hotel to the expo center?
No, ma'am, that's not part of this scope.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that at all?
No, ma'am, because it's truly to get the public into the hotel. I would think that the county would be the ones responsible if people are staying in the hotel to get to their expo center.
Okay, then what status is this project at? Is it, in drawing stage or getting ready to bid? Or, I guess I'm asking, do we have time if we can't decide tonight what we want to do? We're not going to hold it up, are we?
You absolutely have time. You absolutely have the ability to defer consideration of this. We have final plans. We have the final cost estimate. I have made it clear to the hotel manager that they are not to put this project out to bid until we have approval for the funding of it. So we absolutely have time to put this on pause now or permanently.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Duncan.
So I'm inclined to make a motion, but I may let city manager and Braxton choose their own adventure, because I honestly don't know what you'd prefer might be better. One motion would be to just defer this until next month, so in totality, so we can at least get a yes or no from the county. That's fine, make the request and see what they tell us, and then we'll have the information if they'd like to participate, even though I think we all may know what the answer is, and that's okay. Or I also see in this that we definitely have work that needs to be done as part of this proposal on the sidewalk and a loading dock. So my other motion could be to allow that piece of this project to move forward, because we have to have a good sidewalk and a good loading dock. But I don't know if that piecemeals it out worse, because we'd rather, if we're going to do the whole project, do it at once. So I can either make one of those two motions, but I want to give you guys some.
Okay. Putting my public works construction cap on, it makes more sense to bid it one time, to have those larger quantities. We're going to get better bid prices, and to do all the work at one time with the single staging, with the record snowfall that we had. I don't see any construction work happening on any project in the next 30 days in terms of things thawing out and then drying out, and then God knows we're going to get another snowstorm and other cold weather. So we absolutely have the ability to, if you want more time to think about this, I would have your motion be to defer it. I'm happy to reach out to the county. I have a pretty good idea what their response is going to be.
Me too. I feel we have a responsibility to our taxpayers to make the request. So the motion I will make is to defer this to whenever the next scheduled meeting is, with a request that between now and then we inquire to the county if they are willing to pick up any cost sharing on the portions that would go over county property. There's my
And I'll
motion.
second.
So I think I don't know if the motion's in order. I think you might have to have a date certain. We are looking at potentially February 14th or more likely February 21st for the next TDC meeting, because we have been told by GF that they need to submit a operations funding request to us. They're thinking that they're going to do that at the very end of the month. I told them that I need 2 weeks' notice to be able to get you guys notice to get a TDC meeting. So we could tentatively do it for the 14th, and then if that gets bumped, then we could simply,
I was hoping my catch-all of the next scheduled meeting.
I think you're fine. We're under the TDC rules, not the governing body rules. Governing body rules require a date certain. TDC rules falls under Robert's rules, and I think you're fine with your
Crossing my
catch-all.
fingers there. That was broad enough.
Okay, there was a motion made by Director Duncan and a second by Director Hofer. Under discussion of that motion, I had one more question that I wanted to ask before the motion, and that is, I guess, with the city attorney. And we've talked about the responsibility as a governing body or an entity, a city owning that property, why we have this requirement. Is there not a same requirement for the event center? I mean, because to get to the event center, you have to walk in the street.
It's been an interesting day where I've been stuck in the ADA laws all day long. I guess I'm glad I reread it today. But yes, government facilities fall under Title II of the ADA and must provide accessible services and all of their programming. And there are rules when things apply, and yes, they do.
So at this point, at least, they have not addressed it.
I don't know what internal conversations they've had. I know that Braxton says it's not done.
And the reason I ask this is because if we're going to go to them and ask them about possibly sharing in the cost, might point out that it's to their benefit as well because of a responsibility they have to have that access, that they'll be able to use that to get for people to get to the event center. So in a sense, they'll benefit from our actions as well. So I would press them for that piece, that they would be able to share in some of the costs because of a shared benefit for that sidewalk. That's just a comment that I wanted to make as we move forward. I know we're going to defer, I'm guessing that's what the vote will be, but I just wanted to make that ask, that if, in asking the county, if they can see the benefit of piggybacking with us so that it's a shared cost and it would accomplish the same thing for them as it is going to for us. Director Hiller?
Thank you, and I support that. I guess prior to your remarks, I mean, the thought I was making had in my head, is the whole reason we got involved in this hotel, and they did before that, and looked at it, was for the connection between the hotel and the expo center, and aside from any legalities, to make sure that people can get from the hotel to the expo center back and forth, it would be just a common sense, high priority to make the whole system work. So even with that angle in the discussion, I would certainly support that, and it makes so much sense to make it all one project.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Further comment or discussion? We'll take can we take a
It should be roll call on this.
roll call vote because we have some member or directors absent?
I'm walking in right now.
Who's that?
Marcus.
Is that Marcus?
Marcus from heaven.
Okay, if you guys agree consensus, we can do it by then. Okay.
Okay. So,
So motions to defer.
motion to defer.
With that.
Is there,
He's
before we take the vote, Marcus, if you can hear us, do you have any comment you want to add?
I do. It's starting to get loud because it looks like walking so long. You want to literally coming to the door.
have no idea what to
If
say.
you stated something, Marcus, we can't hear it or understand it in the chamber.
There it is.
He's coming in the door. There you go. Didn't want to rush it until you got a chance to.
I appreciate your patience, team.
So the chair will recognize Director Miller.
Thank you very much. My thought is that if we are under the knowledge right now that we're supposed to do the walk, I think we have a duty to do something about it. But if off the motion that you were just talking about, if we're punting to basically see if we can get it sold before we have to do it,
No.
then that makes sense. But that's what it kind of sounds like we're doing, which is fine. But I want to make sure that we understand, I'm not speaking for legal, but I think that we have a duty to actively try and do it if we are under the knowledge that it needs to be done. Am I wrong?
That wasn't all there was to it.
No, I'm just saying my piece of my thought.
Just to clarify, we're punting in part because between now and the next meeting, since part of this will go over county property, we want to make a full vetted request and discussion with the county about them participating in a cost share.
No, I agree with that piece as well.
That's the primary reason.
Okay, but I want to ask that question. Do we have a duty to get it done?
Do you believe now that you are very public notice of it in a public meeting that you should do it if you have the ability to do it? But to Braxton's point, weather, delays, snow, you can't even do it immediately right now if you wanted to. So it seems like it's legally reasonable to wait.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, we have the question, second, and no further discussion. Can we do by acclamation, or?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Motion one opposed.
right.
Councilwoman Ortiz, Director Ortiz.
So the motion carries. With Councilmember Director Ortiz voting no.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Director.
Thank you. I voted no because I came in the middle of the conversation. So it's not that I don't agree with it or disagree, but I didn't get to hear all of the discussion. So I wanted to make that clear for the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll move on now to item number 6. Madam Clerk.
6 is approval of additional funding request in the amount of $32,191.55 for service elevator repair at Hotel Topeka, contingent upon governing body approval of the transfer of the funds to the Topeka Development Corporation.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Assistant City Manager Copley will take us through this item and answer any questions you may have.
Hotel Topeka has 2, I'll call them passenger elevators that are for the guests. It also has 1 service elevator for the staff to be able to not have to use the guest elevators, to be able to get up and down all of the floors, to make up rooms, etc. The drive in the service elevator went out. I received Friday afternoon that news, as well as a request for the $32,191.55, including tax, for Kone to come in and replace the obsolete service drive with a new drive. Because this is under $50,000, the resolution is to use city operating funds, fund balance, to pay for the $32,000 for the service drive. Honestly, if we don't do it, it will be included in the next operating funds request from Hotel Topeka, because they look at this as a necessity and not a luxury to have an elevator for the staff to be able to get up and down those floors to make up rooms. So with that, I would respectfully ask for your approval of the $32,000 request to replace the drive to make the service elevator operable again.
Any questions? Director Dobler.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Director Dobler, second by Director Duncan.
Consensus? Yes.
Do a consensus vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. We have 2 opposed,
Okay.
Director Miller and Director Banks.
Okay, so the motion carries.
Okay. Motion's carried. I don't see anything in my notes for the need for an executive session.
So there is an agenda item for an executive session at the TDC. I believe it is item 6?
Item 7.
7, I'm sorry. I printed off the older one before we added the other one, 7.
Okay. So
We would respectfully request for an executive session. The city attorney has the motion.
The motion would be,
City Attorney, if you'll read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss data related to the financial affairs and trade secrets of one or more corporations as allowed under KSA 754319B4. The open meeting will resume in the City Council chambers. The following individuals will be necessary to assist the board in its deliberations: City Manager Perez and other individuals the board finds necessary.
Okay, you've all heard the need. I didn't see it on my agenda for an executive session. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. One opposed, Director Ortiz. We will immediately recess into executive session for 10 minutes. All right. If we could clear the room, please, except for those required for the executive session. Okay. City Attorney, okay. We have concluded our executive session for the TDC, and that meeting was adjourned.